I got you. I was wondering. All right, let's. Today we're going to talk about our animal class again. And yesterday we created this zoo array to hold a bunch of animals, right? And we created a bunch of animals. But it would be nice if instead of an array we could do some other things to our zoo. I might want to have some methods like I want to add a new animal to my zoo, or I want to look at the inventory of my zoo, how many tigers I have. And so that leads us to think maybe I should have another class called my zoo class to hold all my animals. So what I've done here is I've created I took away the zoo code from my animal class, and I'm going to include this or require it in my zoo side. So this we'll use the require relative, which is easier, and we're going to require animal.rb. That will be our animal class. And so this program should run the same way as it did yesterday. Let's just run it and make sure. Yep. So that's fine. What it's doing is this require is bringing in all the code, you can think of it like that, all of this animal class and my zebra class and my hyena class into my zoo program. And so that when I do a zebra.new, for instance, that's all going to work. Okay, so at least it works. So instead of having an array in my main program, let's start to create a new class that will hold all of these animals. So we'll create a new class in here called zoo, and we make it capital Z. And it's not going to inherit from anything. It's just going to be a zoo. And what's the first method we have in our zoo class? Initialize. Very good. Initialize. And let's not pass anything right now. What could I use now to store a bunch of something? An array of animals. Okay, so I'm going to call it my cage. All right, my cage is going to be initialized when I create a new zoo. In California, I'm going to have a new cage to hold them all in. Right? They don't put them in cages. I know. This is a non-politically correct one. If I then go to Colorado and create a new zoo, it's going to have its own different cage. So this cage is an array, and we want to keep in mind the encapsulation of this, because I might change this later on and say that my cage is going to be saved into a database. It might have a table. That might be a table instead of an array. So I don't want the outside world using my zoo class to know how I'm doing this, right? So I never expose my cage as a reader or a getter. We use other methods to hide that implementation. So all that does is create it, and we need to be able to add an animal to our cage, right? So we're going to go rope them up and add them. So we'll call an add animal method, and we need to know what the animal is. So we're going to receive that in our method. And how would we add an animal then to our cage? We just push it, right? Our cage instance variable, we're going to push whatever they send me, which I'm hoping is an animal object. An entire animal object is going to be pushed into my cage. All right? So the next thing that my zoo needs to do is I want to take an inventory of my animals. All right? So I need to print out a report that is the sum of all my animals, right? So I'm going to call it inventory, and it doesn't need any parameters to it in this case. So how do I create or print out all of the animals in my... All right, I need to loop through them. And what is my singular of my cage? It's an animal coming from that. All right. And what would I print out in here then? Okay, right. So an animal should know how to print itself. So there are methods that I've created in my animal class that let an animal display itself, right? So let's go look at my animal class and see. I've got an identify and I've got a toCSV. So it depends on what you want to print. So I'm going to do the toCSV method. All right. So all I have to do is call animal.to_CSV. Now, what does that do? What is the result of calling this method on my animal class? It creates a string, right? So that's a string. If I just put a string here, that doesn't do anything, right? It's going to get thrown away. So what do I need to do with this string? All right. If I tried to puts it, we're in a class, right? And that's a big no-no. I'll fail you. But if I call return, how many animals will I get? No. No. Because when I call return, this method stops. The first time I call return, it's going to return the first animal it sees in the cage and quit. That return jumps you out of this each block and goes back to whoever called it. So that's not good, right? I can't just return it. I need to... Not a length, no. This loop is fine. There you go. I need something else to store this. I'm going to create a long string of a bunch of these CSV strings, and then return that long string, which is the inventory. So we'll call it inventory. That's probably a bad name. I hate these. I usually call them ret string. Return string. Okay, some string, and I initialize it to a blank string. And then every time I get an animal, I need to add that to it, right? Ret string plus equals my animal string. So this ret string is going to be some bigger and bigger and bigger string. To make it print nicely on the screen, I'm going to have to add something to my string. A new line, right? Very good. So I'm going to have a /n added to each one of these. Then it's going to loop through. Ret string is going to keep getting added. The CSV file, one after the other, ching, 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 my string gets bigger and bigger. And then finally, outside the loop, once I'm done with that, I can return my ret string. Did everybody see that? Any questions on my inventory method? All right, so I think I have, yes? Right now? Yes. Yeah, I'll put all of this out there. Okay, so now let's start looking at my main program. I can, am I still recording? Good. My main program can start to utilize this zoo class that I have. So what do I have to do to my zoo class to be able to start using it? All right. What's the big computer sciencey term for that? Instantiate. Okay. I need to instantiate. I need to create an instance of my zoo, and so that zoo is going to be a zoo object, right? So I need to create, instead of saying zoo equals a blank array, I can now call my zoo class and create me a new zoo. And since I don't have any parameters in my initialize method, that's all I have to do. Now, what type of object is zoo? It's a zoo object, right? So I can do zoo type stuff with it. Zoo-y type stuff. You guys love when I say that, I know. So instead of instead of this 10.timesDo now, I can do, how do I add a new animal into my zoo class? I can't do a push because zoo is not an array, right? Zoo contains an array, but I can't push right into that. So what methods have I written that'll add animal, all right? So instead of this, I can say zoo.addAnimal, and the animal that I want to add is a new zebra that I created, right? So this will do the same thing, except I'm calling my addAnimal now. This zebra.new creates a new, what type of an object? A zebra object, good, which inherits from the animal class. So this is an animal, specifically a zebra. That object is going to be passed to my addAnimal method up here. So animal receives that new zebra that I created. And all this does is push it into my cage. We just stuff them in the same cage, right? And I'm going to do that 10 times. So now can I do, let's move on to the next piece. Can I do a zoo.count?
Yeah.
Why? How? All right, so let's I want you to see this. So let's run my zoo. All right, undefined method count for my what class? My zoo class. Zoo is not an array. Zoo contains an array. I don't have any way of knowing how many animals I have in my zoo. Right? There you go. I could write my own method to do that, right? So I come up here and I could write a method. I can even call it count. All right? Count how many are in my zoo. So how would I do that?
You would do cage.count.
There you go. At cage.count. So I'm just going to return, and I'll put the return in here. I want to return the value of my array. Now, if I later on change my zoo class to be a database connection, this might be a SQL query to say, do a count on my table, right, and return that number. But the outside world, they're just going to call zoo.count, and they don't care about that, how you're implementing the internals of my zoo. So now I have 10 animals in my zoo. See how that works? Isn't that cool? We're calling the zoo objects count, and this has nothing to do with the array at all. There's no such thing in the outside main program that I know that zoo holds an array. I don't care. I should never know that. All right. So, let's move on and let's try our inventory method. So what does our inventory method return? Okay, so how do I get a string out to the console? Puts zoo dot inventory, right? I'm going to call my inventory method on my zoo class. My zoo class creates and builds up this big string, returns that, and then my puts will print it out to the screen. Look at that. That's sweet. So I've got my zebra inventory here. All right. Another thing I could change to make this, have some titles on it. So if I'm going to load this into Excel or something, I could change this and have the title. So I have my, let's not do that. Well, I can do that. Let's see. So I have my name, and then I have the color, and I have stripes is all I have so far. So now when I run it, it makes a nicer table. name, color, stripes. Why did this happen here?
Because you used slash n.
I need a slash n after my title here. So I'm going to put a slash n here, just inside the string. Bada boom, bada bing, look at that. Is that sweet? Nice little inventory report. I could save that to a disk, open it in Excel, and each of these would be in their own cells, their own rows. All right? Any questions on any of this so far?
You've got two different files there, the animal and the C file. Can you show me where you're using for requiring one of the
So this is loading in the animal.rb file, which has all of my animal class. It has my tiger class and my zebra class in here. This can be done two different ways. This is an easier way that they added because they screwed up the require from version 1.8.7 to 1.9. You used to be able to do this. And if animal.rb was in the same directory as zoo.rb, that would work fine. But they screwed it up. And to make that work now using the require, you have to use a /, which means look in the current directory where I'm at and look for a, and this needs to be single quotes, or it screws up also. Look in the current directory for a file name called animal.rb. You've done this in CSS where you say, look back a directory, that's 2 dots, and maybe look back 2 directories and find my style or my image.css or image.ping or something. So that's the same concept, but the single dot means look in the current directory where I'm at. So this would be useful if I stored my classes somewhere else in another directory. I could point to those. So the require relative does the same thing. It basically adds this // to my name here. So those are identical statements. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we've got an inventory. What else might I want to do with my animals? Well, let's look at my animals. What else can they do? Well, they can all speak, right? So let's have a method in my zoo class just to show you some more cross-class working. Let's create a method called make noise. And the make noise is going to tell every animal, it's like hitting them with a prod, right? Make some noise, and you're going to tell every animal to speak. However it speaks, it's going to speak its own voice, right? So how would I do that? How would I tell all of my animals to speak? Loop what? What do I loop? Okay, through my cage array, I'm going to say cage dot each do animal. I like spaces there. And I'm going to look at each animal, and I'm going to call their speak method. And since this is, what does this return? This animal.speak. A string, right? So their speak method returns just a string. I need to do the same thing I did with my inventory. So I'm going to have a ret string. Has a blank. I'm going to add that. Each one of them, and I'll put a carriage return at the end of it. And then at the end of my method, I'll return my ret string. Okay, does that make sense? Looping through, calling each animal's method. So this might be very similar to calling the songs play method. Hint, hint. Right? Each song needs to be able to play itself. So I'm calling the songs method to do that. And I can call my make noise method. And it will tell every animal to do something. So it says this is the speak method for the first zebra, first animal that I have. And he says, hello, my name is Zebra 0, Mufasa. Right? Isn't that great? Mufasa. Repeat the hint. So the hint is that if I want to play a particular song or play all the songs in my jukebox, I call this is what I would do. That's exactly the same. I would call the songs play method here. Song.play. And let each song play itself. It knows how to play itself.
What does it do when it plays it?
Just says playing my song name, just kind of like I'm doing with a speak here. We're not actually doing anything special.
So we're not using the whole timer method.
No, there's no timing in this or nothing.
Yay!
No timing.
Just in case the sounds goes awry.
Right. So,
Comments during the online file.
good. All right, so I have, let's create some different animals and add some different animals to my zoo. So let's add some tigers. So I create a new tiger, and I'm going to do something similar so they have a tiger with a number in it. Yeah. And they don't have any stripes. So this creates what type of an object? A tiger object who is whose parent is an animal. So I can just call my zoo and add my animal to that. All right, so I'm going to add 5 new tigers to my zoo, and then let's print out my inventory again. So now I've got Tigger 0, Tigger 1, Tigger 2, Tigger 3, Tigger 4, and they're all orange. All right? Any questions on that? They could have stripes, right. And they could have different numbers of stripes. Very true. So let's create some hyenas. We have some hyenas. And notice that when I called my, I didn't call my speak on that one. Let's just do this once. And do this after I create all my animals. All right, so that I can see how many I have. So let's do another 5.times2. We'll copy and paste that guy. And create some hyenas. And this was, what were these guys called? Did I create a hyena before? Whoopee, that's right, Whoopee. We gotta have a Whoopee in here. Whoopee 0 through 5 or 4, and they're brown. After num? Oh, you wanna, okay, fine. You want all of these like that? Just for you, David. We'll put a +1 after all of these guys. You don't like a 0 guy, huh? All right, so this is 0 guy. All right, so now we've got Whoopee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Zebra 1 through 10, and Tigger 1 through 5.
And of course the hyenas don't
They don't say anything, right? They have nothing to say here.
It's kind of weird because usually it's just LOL.
All right, so let's go fix our hyena to speak. We didn't have any. Well, he should be speaking. He should have said, "Hello, my name is." Oh, he is speaking. He's saying, "Hello, my name is Whoopi." That's his speaking. So let's follow that through just to show how this is all working. My make noise goes up here and iterates through or loops through my cage one at a time, calls the animal, each specific animal's speak method, which goes over in the animal class. And in the case of a tiger, he's going to say whatever the animal says, and he's going to add gur to the end of it. A zebra adds Mufasa to the end of it. And my hyena doesn't have anything. So where does it get its speak method from? From the animal class, right? So it first comes to the hyena and says, "Oh, I don't know what to do, so I don't have a speak method, so go check out my parent." So it comes up here, and we see here's my parent, and here's the method for speaking. That's the default method for all of my animals. Right? See how that all works?
Turn LOL.
Yeah, we could make our hyena, we could say override the speak method and return my super plus LOL. All right. So now let's rerun our zoo. And now they say whoopee LOL. Isn't that cool? So how might I look at a specific animal? Let's say I just want to look up an animal in my cage. I want to call one of my hyenas or something like that. How do I do that?
Probably ask the user for something.
Okay.
And then set that to a method
And what would that method be?
that would be in your zoo class.
Right, very good. So I need to have a zoo method that lets me look at something specific. So I'm going to change my inventory method to have, and this might be a really good hint for you. I'm going to have, there's another method called each with index. Remember that? And that gives you the animal and some index, and we'll call it index. So that index is going to be incremented from what starting number? 0, which I don't like as a menu item. So I'm going to put the index plus 1, right? Index plus 1. And we'll put a period and a space, and then we'll add the rest of it. So now when I print out my inventory, look at that. It's got a nice number next to each one of them. Isn't that sweet? That's cool stuff. So now I can use, in my main program, I can say, maybe I just want to view a particular animal, right? So I'll say print view which animal. And I'm going to get that user choice equals what? How do I get a number from the user? Gets.toI, right? And then I'm going to call a method called zoo.find. And we're going to pass it something, the user choice, okay? So the number, I want to find a specific person, and we'll come back and we could just print this out. I'm just going to return a string, okay? Why? All right. That's a good point, but we don't know what the zoo is storing this as. We don't know that they start at 0, right? That should be done inside the class, should take care of that. It should, because I already did that inside of my class saying, so they have no idea that there's a 1 or a 0, right? They know that I want number 1, so my class needs to take care of that math for me, so I don't have to worry about that. So, does that make sense? All right, so I'm going to pass that. So I need to create a method called find in my zoo class. So I'm going to create a method called find. And it has the record number. We'll call it the record number. And we need to return some representation of that particular record. All right, so how do I get that particular record from my zoo? Remember, how am I storing my zoo in here? It's an array, right? It's just by index. So I can return a lookup the array, cage, sub, record num, -1. So I'm going to take care of that for them and take care of that. So that will return what if I just do that? Which is no. It's an animal object, right? Whatever that object is, because I'm storing the entire object into my cage, like I'm storing the entire song into my jukebox array. Very similar to this. So it depends on how I want to use that in my main program. Do I just want to return a string which represents that? Or maybe I want to return the entire object. All right? So let's return the entire object like this and see what happens when I print that to the screen. So let's put, yeah, that'll work. All right, so it's sitting and says view which animal. So let's look at Tigger 1. That'll be number 11. And when I printed it out, that shows that I'm returning the entire animal object, the entire object. So I might want to use that in my main program and change some properties, update the tiger's name, anything I want to do with the tiger. Or I just might want to print that out. So it's a tiger. This becomes what then? What is this evaluate to? An object. It is an animal object, right? So I can do animal-y type stuff to it. So I could call the toCSV method on it and print out what the tiger is going to look like. All right? So I'm going to look at number 12, and it prints out Tigger 2 orange. So I can do whatever I want to this object. This becomes an animal object, and I can do something to it. If I just want to print out the name of that particular guy, we'll look at number 13, is Tigger 3. Okay, so I can do anything I want outside of that. Once I've retrieved the record from the cage, once I've retrieved the animal from the cage, that animal object is available to do whatever I want with it. Does that make sense? Right. So that pretty much covers everything you need for that assignment, I believe. And we'll talk again about it next Monday, or a week from Monday when I come back. All right, any questions? Isn't that fun? Now, just a side note, this is how Rails does almost everything. We use these little methods that it creates for us, like find or something like that, and we give it a record number. We don't have to write SQL commands at all. It goes out and queries the database, gives me back the record, and it's an object that I can play with and do different stuff with. So this is almost exactly like how Rails does things. All right.